So before I begin, my talk is only going to be about how not to lose your values in business. And when I say values, this is not money. These are your principles that are intertwined with who you are as a person. That's what I mean by values. So how not to lose your values in business, especially in our world where we have a lot of gray areas. Okay, a little bit more about myself. I've been featured in some of these publications. I've spoken in TEDx. And if you're wondering about that bright red logo in the corner, I am not in the centerfold. And they featured me for a fully wholesome feature, which asks why SEO is a hot job for millennials. So I was there. I think that was September 2017. And I was featured along with Mr. Jose Marichan. Okay, I have founded a couple of companies, and the first one being SEO Hacker. You'll get to know the story a little later on in the talk. And my business is digital marketing. I manipulate search results. That's called SEO. For those who don't know, it's search engine optimization. And I have done that for a lot of businesses here and abroad. Some of the books that I have written, two of them are ebooks. 50x Your Business. CEO at 22 is my first book, and that's printed out, and you can buy it from Lazada or Shopee or my website. And these are some of the brands and organizations who have gotten me to speak through the years. I've been speaking for a decade now, and I'm also a John Maxwell speaker and coach and a Reese motivation profile master. So I've spoken to a lot of organizations and I'm speaking to you tonight. I hope you get a lot of value out of this talk, and we will have the Q&A later. All right. So my first question as I begin, why do you want to do business? And please do not put two paragraphs in the chat box. Just put one or two words and that's it. Okay, one or two words. Why do you want to do business? The first thing that comes to mind, that's probably it. Leave it in the chat box. Okay? To add value to people's lives, to work, to survive, money, to earn money, self-reliance. Okay. Edward says productivity. Christine says to help people. It's very good. Okay. Mona Lisa C says to be financially independent, to help, personal branding, family legacy, better time for myself or more time for myself, needs of the people to be challenged. So there are several reasons right off the bat for some people who have given their answers here. And there are other reasons that other people would have aside from these. How deep are our reasons really? That is something that I hope you will be able to explore as we go along. Now, my next question for you is, who among you here are married? If you're married, just say me or I in the chat box. Okay, so there's just 4 people who are married here, including myself. So I'm assuming we have mostly people who are not yet married. Who among you here are planning to get married someday? You're planning to get married someday. Okay, Neil Kua says soon. Perfect. Wow, that's good. Kim says me. And the rest of the 160 plus people are people who never want to get married. Okay. If you're married or you plan to get married someday, this is something that we all have to be familiar with. In marriage, there are rules that we have to follow. Me and my wife, we have rules. I've been married for 7 years now. These rules, are sometimes simple, sometimes complex. Rules such as who would take the garbage out, who will sweep the floor, who will wash the dishes, and guess who does it? It depends, right? It depends. If I make her happy, then she will do it. If may kasalanan ako, then I will do it. Okay? No, I'm just kidding. But there should be rules in marriage. There's also rules whenever we have conflict. When you have conflict in marriage, it doesn't have to be messy. It doesn't have to be hurtful. But there's such a thing that we call hitting below the belt. When you hit below the belt, that's something that really hurts. So one example for me is when I get compared to other men or to her past relationships, that hurts. That for me is below the belt. For her, when I compare her to her mom, that's hitting below the belt. And once we cross that line, we all know what's going to happen. the plates will go flying. And guess who will sweep the floor? No, me and my wife, we rarely fight. And we always have a good, clean fight nowadays. And that's because I always sweep the floor after. No? I'm just kidding, guys. Pinapatawa ko lang kayo. We rarely fight. And the point is, we have to have rules in marriage, even in conflict. For marriage to be beautiful, loving, peaceful, and long lasting, we have to have rules. And when you get married, how long are you planning to get married? Till death do us part, di ba? We need to have rules because God has the best rules for marriage. Marriage is beautiful when we follow God's rules. For example, husbands must only have one wife and be faithful to her and be willing to die for her as Christ loved the church. For wives, they have to submit to their husbands as to the Lord. There are rules in marriage for it to be beautiful. Now, I always say in business, it is like a marriage. You have to have rules. What are your rules for business? Do you have rules now? For those of you who are business owners now, we have a lot of business owners here. Earlier, I was listening to people who are business owners and who have businesses. And in the Tauke talks, I think we have a lot of business people listening in, or a lot of people who want to start their own business. Do you have your rules now? Or do you already have them planned out when you're going to start your business pa lang? Now, if you don't, or if you are open to adopting some rules for your business, I would like to share some of the rules that I personally adopted and implemented in my business. And you can feel free to screenshot this, make a copy for yourself. Feel free to do that. These are not my rules. I did not invent them, but I adopted them. First is pay the right taxes. Now, there's a story in the Bible where the Herodians, who are politicians or wannabe politicians during Jesus' time, and the Pharisees, who are leaders in the religious law, two groups came to Jesus and they came to trap him. They said, "Teacher, we know you're a man of integrity. You aren't swayed by others because you pay no attention to who they are. But you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth." So, binola-bola pa nila si Jesus, no? Is it right to pay the imperial tax to Caesar or not? Should we pay or shouldn't we? Of course, kung sinabi ni Jesus, no, we shouldn't pay, the Herodians would then bring that to Caesar and say, this man is teaching others not to pay the imperial tax. And if Jesus says, yes, of course you should pay it, then the Pharisees would tell other Jews that Jesus is encouraging the occupation and rule of the Romans against the Israelites. Both ways will not be good for Jesus. And what he says to them is, why are you trying to trap me? Bring me a denarius and let me look at it. Now, a denarius was a Roman coin during their time. So they brought the coin to Jesus and he asked them, whose image is this and whose inscription? Caesar's, they answered. Then Jesus said, give back to Caesar what is Caesar's and to God what is God's. And whose image and inscription are you? The Bible says we are in the image and likeness of God. Give God what is God's. We give ourselves to him. And they were amazed at him. And that's how Jesus answered them. Now, when you read the Bible, you would also realize that actually Jesus paid his tax. Believe it or not, he paid his tax. And the Bible is very clear. We are under authority. And we are under the authority of the government and of God. And the Bible says, God placed the authorities there. Siya naman naglagay niyan dyan eh. So whether we like the government, whether we like the leadership or not, we submit to them as we submit to God. So one of my rules is pay the right taxes to the government. Second is treat your people fairly. Colossians 4 verse 1 says, Masters, treat your slaves justly and fairly, knowing that you also have a master in heaven. Now, I'm not saying na, yung non-performer mo and yung performer mo, dapat pantay yung bonus nila or dapat pantay yung raise nila or salaries nila. That's not what I'm saying. In fact, that's unfair. Because the performers, you should reward more. And the non-performers, you should not reward at all. What I mean by treat your people fairly is treat them like how you want to be treated. Okay? Treat them like how you want to be treated. When they ask for your time, when they ask for your help, do it. Be the leader that you yourself want to have. Pay your people what you agreed on. This is the next rule, and pay them on time. This is very important because for a lot of people who are employees, umaasa sila sa salary nila eh. And the Bible actually points this out. In the book of James, chapter 5, verse 4, it says, "Behold, the wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, which you kept back by fraud, are crying out against you, and the cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord of hosts." Na magrereklamo sila because you held back their wages. So pay your people what you agreed on and pay them on time. Another rule that I have is never lie, cheat, nor steal from clients, people, or the government. And I might add to God, because God demands 10% of what you make. Luke, the book of Luke in the Bible, chapter 16, verse 10, one who is faithful in very little is also faithful in much. And one who is dishonest in very little is also dishonest in much. This means that if you steal 10 pesos, you could also steal 100 pesos. There's a story of a person who says, if you get a thief who is stealing nuts and bolts from a railroad and send them to university, someday they will no longer steal nuts and bolts. They will steal the entire railroad. So someone dishonest in little, also dishonest in much. You as the business owner should have this principle. Never lie, cheat, nor steal from your clients, people, the government, or God. Another rule I have is work hard. As leader, as CEO, work the hardest. Make sure that no one outworks you in your team. Lead from the front, don't manage from behind. Colossians chapter 3, verse 23 in the Bible says, whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men, not even for yourself. I have more than 50 people in the team in SEO Hacker today, but I still make sure that I work harder than any one of them. My next rule is be a one-man person. Practice the one-man principle. Who you are at work is who you are at home, and who you are at home is who you are at work. Who I am here as your speaker, the way I speak, the things that I'm sharing with you, these are things that I've shared before. These are things that I share in my podcast. How I'm speaking now is how I speak to my team and my people, is how I speak to my family. Be the same person because people will look at your life once you are leading them and once you have power over their life because you're the one signing the paycheck. Now, what happens when you don't have rules for business? You don't have rules for business, it becomes a problem. Because as business owners, we have the illusion of being in control. Akala natin, sa atin siya, sa atin lahat. Ako nagsimula niyan eh. Right? We have the illusion of being in control as if we are mini gods of sorts. This illusion is usually stripped from us when problems and life-changing or traumatic events occur. The pandemic slapped a lot of people in the faces, and we woke up and we realized we're not really in control. We can't do a lot of things about it. SEO Hacker last year, we didn't grow our revenue. We actually shrank a little bit. And then this year, suddenly we had an influx of clients that's unprecedented. And it shook our operations. Even if it was good for our revenue, we were all shaken. So we don't have control. When we start to believe this illusion that we're in control, this is the time, that is the time when we lose the game because we lose our why. How many times have we heard business owners say, I do this for my family's future. I do this for my kids. I do this for my marriage, only to see them destroy their family in the present by being an absentee parent, by being short-tempered, by being unfaithful, or by being a bad example. How many times have we heard business owners say, I do this for me to be financially free, and yet you look at their lives, they are enslaved by lusts for more luxury, houses, cars, experiences, traveling around the world. They want more and they can't let go anymore of the material things that they have accumulated. How many times do we hear business owners say, I do this to create more job opportunities, to make for a better economy? And yet we see them tightening up or eliminating some of their employees or benefits or salaries or even firing people when the business hits a rough spot or they make a bad investment. When we set the rules ourselves, the game of business turns against us. This is why I didn't say earlier that those were my rules. I actually adopted them, and it came from God's word. Those rules are actually rules that stem from the Bible. Now, why did I do that? Why did I adopt my rules from the Bible? Well, the Bible has over 2,000 verses about money and business. Believe it or not, over 2,000 business. God knows what we will be busy with and has provided us wisdom about money way ahead of time. Compared to 150 plus verses about heaven and hell, 2,000 verses is a lot. The Bible is also a very solid, coherent, foundational truth that has never been historically disproven by scholars or archaeologists. And I also happen to believe that it is the actual Word of God. So there is no real reason for me not to use it as the source of morality and rules in my business and ultimately in my life. And this is why I share these things with you in hopes that you will also do the same. Now, the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 8, verse 18 says, But you're to remember the Lord your God, for it is He who is giving you power to make wealth. Do you realize God gives us the power to make wealth? It's not us who actually are so good in making money. The Bible says it's God gives us the power to make wealth. Why? Well, we are to remember the Lord our God. Our ability to make wealth is because of Him. Now, what happens when we don't? Here's what happens when we don't. If you're familiar with the boxer, heavyweight champion Mike Tyson, he says, Money is my God. If you think God will help you, then quit your job and see how much He cares. This is a person without rules in life. Even in boxing, he bit the ear of his opponent off. Is that the part of the rules? That's actually a foul thing that he did. The result of living life without rules? Multiple times he was jailed. Multiple times he was depressed. Multiple times he was abusing substance, drugs, alcohol. And guess what? Multiple times divorced. Because no rules, even in marriage. God has rules to play the game of business the way it is meant to be played. Now, you may think, Sean, this is not for me. It's too difficult for me. Your rules are too tight. It's too strict. Well, that's okay. I tell people, build your business according to your faith. If you have faith in God, you believe He's in control of everything, you believe He will bless you even more if you follow Him, when you do the things He requires, then you build according to that faith. Now, if your faith is not like that, then try it out your way. Or maybe you're doing it your way right now. No one is forcing anything on you. But I will tell you my story. I grew up in a middle income family, if there was such a thing. Hindi kami mayaman. I was not born with a silver spoon, but we had enough to get by. I failed 28 units in college. Lasal wanted to kick me out because I cut a lot of classes. Unbelievably, lots of classes because I was so addicted to playing computer games, namely Dota. And I would cut classes left and right. If you are wondering, yes, I did graduate. But instead of 3 years and 1 term, I graduated after 4 years and 1 term. So 1 year delayed ako. And because of that, I was virtually unemployable. Imagine having 28 smiling faces in your transcript of records. Who would hire you? My life looked bleak, and I started a business with 1,300 pesos. I gave it up to God. Sabi ko, Lord, I always wanted to start a blog for you. Here's my last money. I started the blog called God and You, and I wrote. Here's the problem. I was blogging and writing my heart out for the Lord, but no one was reading my stuff. No one except for 3 people, my mother, my brother, and my sister. And that is not a cool thing. So I studied how I would increase my readers and subscribers. And this thing called SEO kept popping up. This is way back 2009. So I researched into it. Ano ba tong SEO na to? And I experimented on it. And my rankings went up. A lot of people started reading my blog. And I thought maybe some companies need this. They would need to rank for their keywords in Google so that they can be found. After all, Yellow Pages is not being used anymore. So I turned it into a business. Back then, sideline ko lang siya. Freelancer lang ako. Wala pa akong DTI. I was making somewhere 100K. And I tithed and I gave 10% faithfully back to God. I was a one-man team in 2010. I did everything. The legal, the accounting, the sales, the marketing, the cleaning of the office, everything. I was doing it. And then I incorporated in 2015 because I had to deal with SM and they don't deal with sole proprietors. They only deal with incorporated entities. Now, business has not been smooth sailing. There were multiple times I felt like giving up. I also decided to support campus missionaries in their partnership programs where I can provide a monthly amount to them. So it's not been smooth sailing, but through prayer, through being faithful with the rules that I shared with you earlier, God has blessed me immensely. So I mentioned earlier, we are more than a 50-man team right now, and we're still growing. Imagine from a capital of 1,300 pesos. We have hit an all-time high this year in our gross revenue, and I'm still tithing a little over 10% now each month through the pandemic. These are some of the clients that I work with. This is page 1 of our portfolio. So if you're familiar with some of the logos, you might realize that there are some of those there that are the biggest brands here in the Philippines and abroad. And this is page 2 of our company profile. The question is, do you trust God with your business? Do you trust God with your business? I'll tell you a story. This is my closing story. And this is about trust. There was a tightrope artist who proposed to cross Niagara Falls between US and Canada. That's how wide Niagara Falls is. And so sabi niya, who among you believes that I'm able to cross Niagara Falls in its entirety through a tightrope with my balancer? And everyone says, yes, we believe you can do it. So he set it up, put the tightrope, crossed, came back, and they all cheered, yay! And then he asked them again, who among you believes I can cross Niagara Falls to and fro with no balancer? And they said, yes, we believe you can do it. And so he crossed to and fro, and he was back safe, and they celebrated, yay! Okay. Third time around, he asked, who among you believes I can do it with a wheelbarrow as my balancer? They said, yes, we believe you can do it. So he crossed the entirety of Niagara Falls with a wheelbarrow, and he was able to go to and fro, and they celebrated. Then again, he asked them one final time, who among you will volunteer to ride on the wheelbarrow, and I will cross the Niagara Falls to and fro? Do you believe I could do it? They said, yes, we believe you can do it. Who will volunteer? He asked them. No one volunteered. There was silence until finally 10-year-old kid volunteered. And she said, I will ride the wheelbarrow. So he took the kid, put her on the wheelbarrow. He crossed the Niagara Falls to and fro, and she came back safe and sound. Here's my question for you. Those people in the crowd who says they believe he can do it, while it might be true that they were saying they believed, they wouldn't put their life on the line because they didn't volunteer. Trusting in God is putting your life on the line, is putting your business on the line. When I ask you to pay taxes, when I encourage you to pay your tithe 10% to God with how much you make in business, it's all about trust, not just saying you believe. Do you really trust God the way the volunteer trusted the tightrope master? That is a question I leave for you tonight. At the end of our lives, money, fame, and business, it will not matter. Bible says at the end of it all, the entire world will burn, the old world will fade away, and the new world will come. Only what you do for God's kingdom and how much you believe and trust Him will matter. And when you really believe this and live this out, that is how not to lose your values in business and keep your integrity in this gray area business world. This is my last quote for you by John Wesley. Oh, leave nothing behind you. Send all you have before you into a better world. Thank you very much.
So right now, we'll move on to our question and answer portion. Yumi, what's our first question?
Our first question is, how do you balance between setting up rules and being the authority figure versus being relational with your employees?
That is a very good question. With me, I always say arm's length. At the end of the day, people work for you not because they need friends. They work for you because they need someone who will lead them and guide them in how to make money and in how to find success in life and in career. So I would say always put them at arm's length. Do not be too chummy with them. That is always not going to end well. Unless it is your family member who you work with, of course, that's a different story. Would it be all right for me to have a written copy of the questions if you could put it in the chat box? That would be really helpful. I would say being the authority figure is more important. Relational is okay. Of course, that's part of your influence building. You need to have a relationship with them, but not to the point that you're too close with them that they feel like kaya ka na nilang akbayan. Okay, if you know what I mean. They can put their arm on your shoulders, not literally, but in a metaphorical. So always be at arm's length with your people and always know that you have the authority. You're the authority figure whether you like it or not. So you better keep that authority pure, with integrity, and you're leading them to be a better person rather than being a good friend of theirs.
Thank you so much for your answer. So, Sean, we're going to ask our highly voted question, which everybody, I'm pretty sure, can relate to. So, the second question that we're going to ask is, how do you deal with government offices, especially the BIR, that extort money, even if you are trying to be above and beyond reproach? I love that. It's a strong word, extort. So, the question's also there in the comment section. So, what can you say about that?
My first response to that question, which is a very good and very relevant question, especially this time na alam naman nating lahat makulit si BIR ngayon kasi kailangan nila ng pera. The first thing that I would advise you to do is always pray that God will protect you from these kinds of people. And when you use the word extort, I would come from that question using that word because you used that word in the question, extort. Pag extortion na, wala na tayong magagawa. In-extort ka na eh. But if they're asking you for a bribe, that's a different story. If you have a choice to bribe them or not, that's a different story. If they're extorting you, that's a different story. Okay? By God's grace, I have no experience of BIR doing this to SEO Hacker. We pay our taxes right, and we make sure that we always pay, kung may na late kami, we always pay the penalty right. We do have our accounting team and our corporate secretarial team who handles these things for us. But other than that, my rules for that is if it's a bribe that they're asking for, pray and diplomatically turn them down. If it's extortion, then pray and then diplomatically tell them that if I have no choice, then I have no choice and you have to do it. So that's going to be my answer for that.
That's a very bold and radical response. Especially sometimes some bribes or deals with the BIR could cause bankruptcy or closure of a business even. So people's lives are at stake, our employees' livelihoods as well. Yomi, how can you respond also to that? You agree with this answer?
Yes. I think it's very ano talaga now. It's very relevant kasi we see that even social media people, they're trying to extort money from them, diba? So Wala nang ligtas. No.
Even social media influencers, YouTubers, and if you report them, there's even a 1 million peso reward. So we have another question, Yomi.
Yes, our next question, I'm sure, is also very relevant right now. How do you manage a toxic work environment?
You don't manage it. It will kill you. It's toxic. So you have to get out of it. That's my suggestion. If you are not the leader, you are not the head honcho, the main authority figure, there's little you can do about it that's going to turn the ship. Now, if it's a startup with just 5 people, of course you can influence that to be a less toxic environment. But if the environment is 30, 40, 50 people and it is a toxic environment, oftentimes the best is for you to just get out of it.
What
There's
if,
little you can do.
for example, I think a lot of people can relate. What if it's the family business that's toxic?
If it is the family business, then perhaps God is challenging you to pray harder. So that is something that I would always tell you. Pray for your business, pray for your environment, because changing the culture of a company is very, very difficult. Always remember that culture follows the founder's DNA. Culture follows the founder's DNA. And if you are not the founder, then it's very difficult for you to turn the culture around, especially if the company is not intentional about building a good culture. And when I say intentional, it's not just a writing on the wall. Now you have your mission statement and vision statement and core values on the wall. Culture follows the founder's DNA, and that becomes process. That becomes process. So if the process is good, you will have a lot less toxic environment. If there are no processes, magulo, hodgepodge, people are allowed to gossip, sanctioned incompetence is let loose, unresolved conflict is allowed to fester, you have no processes about these things, then you will really have a toxic environment. And it's very hard for you to change that. So in a family business, first thing you do, go down on your knees and pray. That's the best thing you can ever do. Second thing you can do, learn about building a good company culture. That is something that I wrote in a very descriptive manner in my book 50x Your Business. Unfortunately, wala pang hard copy, but you can download it in Amazon for the price of 2 Starbucks coffees. And it's all there. My hiring process is there. How I built the company culture that we have today. Non-toxic, no politics, no bureaucracies. Gossip is fireable. This is the culture we have in SEO Hacker today. And I would argue that it's really why we are the number one SEO company here in the country. It's because we have a really, really good team. So if you're able to download that ebook, study that, read that, it's just 170 pages. And buong proseso ko nandun. So that's actually a cheat sheet for you. You can try to apply that to your family business.
Thank you so much, Sean, for your answer. And actually, everything that you're saying, like culture follows the founder's DNA, that's really such a good quotable quote. And we really agree with that and learning how to make a company culture. So I think that's a good reminder to all the business owners out there, the entrepreneurs who are CEOs in your own right, and even those who are under a boss, you can start and make a positive difference in your own sphere of influence. And also that gossip is fireable. So it's me
Yes.
to terminate.
Yes, that's right. Because, when you ask around, people would say they don't like gossipers. Even gossipers don't like other gossipers. That's the truth. Now, I'm not saying about celebrity gossip. No one really cares about that. But we're talking about the office environment. In the office environment, gossipers don't like other gossipers. Honestly, it's one of the most evil spirits that Satan ever let loose in our world today. The spirit of gossip, especially in the workplace. So when you have a gossiper and you learn about that person, do everything you can to make sure you take out that thorn of poison in your team.
Also, Sean, everyone is asking, what are the titles of your books? We're going to search and check it out on Amazon.
In Amazon is 50x Your Business. That's 50x Your Business. You could also go to leadme.ph/50x. So I'm going to put that here. That's the exact Amazon link. Shinorten ko lang siya, nirebrand ko lang yung link.
Thank you for that. We're gonna read your book, and also even actually you should check out his YouTube channel. He has new content every Tuesday and Thursdays, right? At 6 p.m.
Yeah. Thanks for the plug.
Yeah, because a lot of it's just quick videos, right? Quick
Yeah,
clips.
12, 15 minutes. That's it.
Next question is, I think this one also, since we notice a lot of new businesses popping up during this pandemic, what is the best educational website to study SEO?
We have Moz. You can search this one, MOZ, Beginner's Guide to SEO. That's a very good place to start. Very comprehensive and easy to read. The SEO Hacker blog, which is the blog I started. SEO Hacker, I didn't intend for it to be a business. Hindi ako nangarap maging negosyante dati. It's just a blog. And people started inquiring about SEO if I can do it for them. So I did, and then dumami yung clients and I had to hire people and turn it into a business. So I used to write about the basics of SEO there. Right now, we're writing a lot of advanced stuff, so it might not be the best place to start. But we do have the complete on-site optimization guide. So you might want to search that SEO Hacker on-site optimization guide. On-site is ONSITE. What does that mean? On-site is everything you can do on the site. So keywords, content, paragraphs, images, codes, on-site optimization yan. That's a big part of SEO. And we have the complete guide in SEO Hacker. That's also a good place for you to start.
Okay, another question that we have, Sean. Some people are kind of doubting their career path. So somebody asked, I'm no longer happy at work. Is that a good basis to resign? My work, boss, and environment and pay are okay. How do I know when to resign?
When you are going to jump ship, the first thing that I would tell you is first to check if the other ship is already there. Otherwise, you're going to get wet in the mud. So when you're going to resign, I'm not saying na may next job ka na gagawin or may next business ka na, although those would be perfect. All I'm saying is make sure you have a direction. You're not just going to resign because you're not happy anymore. Make sure you have something else there. Like, you're not happy anymore. Okay, you got that. Nandyan ka na eh. That's fact. You know it already. What's next? What's going to be something that you do believe is going to fulfill you? See, there's the story of this guy who's walking along a street and he sees a mason laying bricks on top of each other. And he asks the first mason, what are you doing? The first mason responds, oh, I'm laying bricks on top of each other. And he goes ahead a couple more blocks down the street and he asks the second mason, what are you doing? And that second mason says, oh, I'm building a church. Okay. And he goes ahead further and he asks the third mason, the last mason, what are you doing? And that mason says, I'm building the house of God. Right now, maybe you're just putting bricks on top of each other. That's why you feel that way. But when you actually realize your calling, which is that third mason, realize that it's a calling. He's building the house of God. When you're there, you got your fulfilling work set for life for you. And there's little reason that you would resign from that kind of work.
Thank you for that, Sean. Especially, it's really difficult to think about quitting if it's your family business that you're thinking of quitting, right, Yomi? So I think there's a question about the family business.
Speaking of family businesses, especially more traditional ones, a lot of the times values are already set in place. So how do you go about or suggest to remove certain practices that are not really biblical? So how do you suggest now people go about this?
Changing the heart of your parent or whoever is the founder and CEO is very difficult. That's the work of the Holy Spirit. So the first thing that I suggest you do is you pray. If it's your dad, pray for your dad. Ask God to turn his heart towards the Lord, and so that he will follow God's word and his business will follow suit. It's very difficult for us to change the values of a company, especially if it's a big ship. It's easy to steer a small boat, but when it's a big ship, it is very difficult to steer that big ship already. So especially with the values kasi is intrinsic to the founder. Eh. So rarely will that change and rarely will an external influence change that. That's why when it comes to these things, prayer is the only answer. Now you could choose the values that you want to live out since you have the choice. as part of that business, as an employee in that company. You can choose only the ones you agree with and live that out and reject the others. That you can do. That is your prerogative. Otherwise, you have to pray.
Thank you for that, Sean. Now, speaking of number of employees, right? So Yomi and I are both businesswomen in our own right, but we have very small teams. And some of the entrepreneurs here also just have a few. Like I only have two secretaries and then one driver. Yomi, how many people are in OC Chef?
Currently, we have 6, but I'm skeletal now, so 3.
Yeah, so a lot of us just have really small businesses. So the next question is, how did you transition from being a one-man team to having 50 employees? So any tips on how to build a team from scratch and how to be a good leader?
I used to be a horrible leader, and I used to be a one-man team. So it took a decade or 11 years now for me to be able to get to where I am, and a lot of divine interventions and appointments in between. So I realized the weaknesses that I have through mentorship and through honest feedback from my people in the team and from family. Becoming a better leader is all about accepting and embracing the truth about who you are. And when I say truth, that involves your blind sides. How do you get to know what your blind sides are? You always ask for feedback from people who love you and who will tell it to you in a either in a kind way or in an honest way. When you scale from a startup, you have 1 to 10 people, kaya pa eh. Kaya pa yan. Kilala mo pa lahat eh. Some of us don't even have employee contracts then. But you have to start building your processes. The thing about business is systems and process are critical. Not just customers, not just your employees, not just your payroll, not just your accounting. Your legal is also important. Your contracts are important with clients, with people. Your The way you structure your hiring process is very, very important. And a lot of business owners miss this out. Kasi iniisip natin, it's hard enough to win clients. It's hard enough to worry about what we're going to be paying our people tomorrow, what I'm going to be eating, by the next month, what I'm going to be feeding my family. We make up all sorts of excuses so that we can relax and not have to work, go the extra mile. And it's difficult. It's very difficult to be a business owner. When I was starting out, I had those excuses in my mind. But when I realized that someday I want to retire, I don't want to work anymore, right? And I hope that is someday relatively early, not when I'm 60, but more of when I'm 45 or 50, maybe. I'm 33 now, I have a couple of more years to go. But when I realized that, the answer to that is build your systems and processes now. So we have our hiring process, all of our processes in the team, like how you do a website audit, how you open up a client pitch, all the way to how you nurture the client, how you turn that over to the accounts manager turning into the project manager. All of those have process documents or videos that can be shared with anyone in the team, especially new hires. So usually, when we hire someone, matagal yan. 3 months minsan bago kami maka-fill ng position. And then when we hire that person, 2 weeks lang, they're already working. They're already hitting the ground running. Natapos na nila yung onboarding, natapos na nila lahat. And we measure that. We track where they are in the onboarding process. We track where they are in the onboarding process. We track where they are in the training process. And we know. So, for example, recently lang, may na-onboard kami. Nagulat ako after 5 working days. Hindi pa niya tapos yung onboarding. Dapat tapos na yun in 5 working days. Immediately, I contacted my HR and my operations manager. Hey, this person has lapsed already. Now we're bleeding money if this person does not finish it by Monday this week. So they talked with that person, and it turns out na nagka-COVID yung family niya, personal problems. We gave leeway. We don't kick our people when they're down. So sabi namin, okay, we understand. And we gave a couple more days. Now that she's finished in the onboarding, she's already being trained by her buddy in the company. We have a culture buddy. So the culture buddy is the one who will talk with that person and say, kaya natin ginagawa to dahil ganito, ganito, ganyan. This is the history why we do things this way in this area. So these things are super duper important. My client contracts, they're very long and they have evolved over the years. I mean, when you have a contract with SM, my gosh, you'll realize all of the things that they're adding there, and you have to study that. When you have your employee contracts nabutasan na ilang beses ng, troublesome employees, then you keep evolving that. And you hired only the best legal advisors as well. So it's over the years. Growing from 10 to 20, kaya pa. Okay? 0 to 10, 10 to 20, kaya pa yan. Pag wala pa kayong processes by then, you will not grow from 20 to 30 to 50. Ang mangyayari, when you try to grow 20 to 30, you will face problems that will make you shrink again. So you have to have your systems and processes in place. That's how we grew it to 50. I don't know everyone in my team right now, but I know my key people. And my key people, they're the ones who knows everyone else in my team.
That was a really substantial and helpful answer. Thank you, Sean. There's a comment here. I hope all companies put the same equipping for new hires. Great leadership. And we really do agree, especially how you are understanding with your employees who are suffering with COVID. I think all businesses just we need to add a little bit of cushion or budget or leeway to our employees, especially now during the pandemic. So, Yomi, I think there's a next question.
Yes, the next question we have is, in your company, how do you feel about new trends on company-initiated inclusivity programs, people from the LGBTQIA plus community?
We don't have such programs because we're inclusive right away. So we don't discriminate between faith. In fact, I don't think the Christian faith is the majority in my team. I think it's Catholic. And some people, we have agnostics, we have polytheists, and we have atheists, and we don't discriminate between faith. We don't discriminate between LGBT. We have a couple of lesbians and gays in our team. And that's fantastic because we can minister to them. These are people who need to hear God's word, and we hold Bible studies every Friday night and we invite them all. So we don't have inclusion programs already. And the reason behind that is they don't feel discriminated. We treat them fairly and the same like everyone else.
Thank you for that. Actually, I can relate with that because some gays also applied as secretary. So they asked me, Ma'am, is it okay lang ba? So, we have to also be sensitive about these issues. So that's right. That's also part of great leadership. So our next question is, how do you make decisions in terms of investment and your business operations as a Christian entrepreneur? So the question's also in the comment.
Well, a Christian entrepreneur is who I am. That's my identity. So every decision I make actually stem from these principles and values that I have in my life. So it's not hard for me to make decisions in investment and business operations. Because if you have principles, madali na yung decision. You don't struggle with the decision anymore. You don't wrestle with the decision anymore. Immediately you have a decision. That's what makes a great leader and manager. There's nothing worse for a leader than an indecisive leader. So having these principles in place, some of which I shared earlier as my rules in doing business, this allows me to create lightning fast decisions in my investments and in my business operations. So we treat people fairly. We lead from the front. All of my leaders have to lead from the front. Hindi pwedeng petics lang. We work hard because we work heartily as unto the Lord and not to men. And when it comes to investments, a lot of verses in Proverbs say, money gained quickly is also quickly lost. So don't be greedy with your investments. Nakarinig ka ng stock tip, ito tataas 80%, 90%. Now, was I able to invest in those kinds of upticks? Yes, may mga investments ako sa stocks up 80% and then I sold. May mga ganun naman. I'm not saying na hindi, dapat pag mataas yung uptick yan, huwag ka mag-invest. That is called stupidity already. So, all I'm saying is don't be greedy with your investments. Now, my personal rule when it comes to investments is invest only if you can sleep well at night. The SWAN principle, sleep well at night. If you cannot sleep well at night, don't invest. Mas importante ang tulog mo, mas importante ang life without stress. But that depends on why you're doing business. The reason why I'm doing business, number one, I want to glorify God. Number two, I want to live a stress-free life. Number three, I want to be in control of my time. So wala dun sa top 3 reasons ko yung I want to make ₱1 billion. I don't want to be that rich. That's not my goal. I just want to have a stress-free life and I want to be in control of my time. So it depends on you. Maybe you'll make an investment, you can't sleep well at night, pero ang gusto mo naman pala talaga is you want to make a lot of money. It depends. Kanya-kanya yan.
Speaking of time, you said you wanted to be in control of your time. How do you balance your time properly and perfectly as you are doing right now? Do you have any tips for us starting out?
Well, balance is something that I don't really believe in and adhere to strictly. Because when I was starting out, I would work 7 days, some weeks, and often 16 hours per day. So there was no balance when I was starting out. But when it comes to time, you cannot really manage time. Time goes on whether you want to or not. The second hand keeps ticking. You can't stop that. There's 24 hours for you and me. I have no 1 minute more than you do. So in reality, you can't really manage time. What you can do is to prioritize what you're going to be doing with it. And if you're good with prioritization and you don't procrastinate, you will be able to make more use of your time. That is how some people would realize I do things. Because there are some people who keep on asking me, bakit parang ang dami mong oras? You're doing so many things. You have the podcast, you have the blog, you have your business, you're leading these people, you have 3 more businesses, you have a startup, you're talking with 2 more investments right now. And the answer to that is you prioritize. Prioritize the things you need to do. And when I say the word prioritize, what I mean is number 1, eliminate all distractions. Okay? Do I have distractions pa rin? I do, but I pick them and I put them on the most useless time of the day. Okay? You need time to unwind. Don't do them in your prime time. 1 p.m. to 6 p.m., doon ka nagnunood ng Netflix or naglalaro ng computer games. That's not good. Okay? Prioritize. Number 2, set aside the urgent or delegate the urgent. That's not important. Okay? Urgent and not important, set it aside or delegate it. Ano ang urgent, not important? May kailangan kang ipaprint, pwede mo iprint ng secretary mo. Right? Or may kailangan kang idalhin na papeles from point A to point B. Hindi naman kailangan ikaw gumawa nun. I-grab mo na lang. Magkano lang yung grab? Magkano oras mo? If you're paying yourself 4,000 pesos an hour, how much is grab? Pag-grab mo na lang. Right? So you can calculate your salary naman per hour. If you're making X per month, divide that by the number of days per month and divide the number of hours you work per day. That's what you're getting paid per hour. That's what you pay yourself per hour. Now, kung mas mahal yung sarili mo kaysa sa Grab, pag-grab mo na lang yung document, urgent but not important. Make sure you set aside those 2 things and only work on, and the urgent and important, or what we call crisis, minimize that. That happens when you prioritize the first 2 that I mentioned. Not urgent, not important, or useless time, useless tasks. Urgent but not important, prioritize mo yung dalawa, magkaka-crisis ka talaga. Magiging important and urgent na siya. So that one you minimize. Always do the important but not urgent. That's what you do. Okay? And oftentimes, yun yung pinaka-least tempting. Yun yung pinaka-least tempting gawin. And pinaka-tempting i-procrastinate. Bakit? I'll give you an example. Exercise is one of them. If you keep on putting off exercise and you don't take care of your body, you eat unhealthy food, that's important. But you don't prioritize it, what will happen? It will turn into a crisis. Suddenly, you need a triple bypass surgery. You have to make time for that, right? Di ka gumawa ng time sa exercise, na triple bypass surgery ka naman. For your car, you don't change the oil faithfully on time, what will happen? Engine failure. You need to overhaul the entire thing. Very expensive, and it's a crisis. So with time, you cannot manage time. The second hand keeps ticking. I don't have a minute more than you do. But you have to prioritize the things that you do with it. That is how you make the most out of it.
Thank you for that answer. You mentioned earlier that especially when you're starting out, you don't really have balance with your time. So there's a question here. How do you regain motivation in work when you've lost it? Because it's more, especially when you're working a lot of times. So parang more risk of burnout.
That's a very good question. I'm a motivational speaker and I've been doing it for over a decade. And you know what I realized? External motivational speakers like us can only fire you up for a moment. But what would motivate you day in and day out for years is a one simple task. You write 20 things you're thankful for every day, and you thank God for them. You will find motivation in yourself. Simple task. This is very practical advice I'm giving you. You do that, you will find motivation every day.
Thank you for that advice, Sean. I think a lot of people who are commenting right now, they are motivated to do that, to become motivated. So it's really important to be thankful indeed. So there are some participants right now who are thinking of just starting a business right now. So any tips for first-time entrepreneurs? What are the first steps to consider? Have you tried borrowing from the bank for business? So bank loan, business bank loans, and can you share how that can be done?
For bank loans, I don't think that you're gonna get them if you're a startup. I wasn't able to secure a credit card for myself, could you believe it? From Citibank until I was doing at least 5 years in business, registered ako 5 years in DTI before they ever gave me a Citibank credit card. So bank loans would be somewhere the same. If you have to have a lot of proof that your business is doing very well before they give you a bank loan, but often they will wait 3 to 5 years for them to give you a bank loan. And my philosophy in business is always to start bootstrapped. What that means is self-funded. Don't borrow money from friends, family in the bank, especially from the bank because it has interest. You don't want to start your new future, and that future is uncertain. The word entrepreneur comes from the French word entreprendre, which means adventurer or risk taker. Literally, an entrepreneur is a risk taker, one who rolls the dice. You don't want to roll the dice knowing that if the dice is not the result you're expecting, you will pay interest and penalty. That's not a good start. So I always tell people, when you start a business, start it with your own money, your own capital, and start small. Don't go for a big carpeted, well-lit office. When I started, my office was at the attic of my parents' house. It was hot, no aircon, and often I would work topless kasi sobrang init at electric fan lang with an 8-year-old Asus laptop that takes 30 minutes to an hour for it to start. Could you believe it? That's how I started. That's my startup phase. And I only had 1,300 pesos as capital. So if your office is better than mine, you're already in a much better place. My gosh. But I always say, mag-bootstrap ka muna. Use your own capital and start small. If you have a business idea, wala ka pa talagang product or service, try to find the customer first with your idea. Ask friends, ask family. If I would sell you this at this price, will you buy it? Simple question. But that will give you a lot of insights. Magko-comment sila. Huwag ka ma-hurt. Kasi sasabihin nila sa'yo kung ano yung gusto nilang feature. That's very important. List that down. Then you will have a working business once you've asked 10 or 20 people who are actually willing to pay you for that idea of a product or service.
Thank you for that. It reminds me of Steve Jobs because the Apple company was born in a garage, right? So
Yeah.
if you can do it with just 1,300, so can everybody here.
So can everyone. That's true.
How do you handle giving to those in need outside of tithing? Do you have a fixed budget that you give out, or is it case to case?
I usually don't share this with other people, but when I was still a freelancer, a friend who became a campus missionary approached me. So I committed a good monthly budget for him and supported him. He's a pastor now and he has a family now, and I'm still supporting him. And I support 3 or 4 other campus missionaries with their expenses. That is on top of my tithe. So I tithe a little over 10% every month to the Lord. And in my time as an entrepreneur, I was also fortunate to be able to give away a car. It's not a brand new car, it's a secondhand car, but I gave that to a pastor. So God has blessed me because of these things. I can't explain it to you. There's no math. There's no math, there's no science to this. But I do see it has come back more and more and more. Because it's unbelievable that it's still the pandemic, but this is our best year so far out of my 11 years in business. So give according to your faith. You have big faith, give a lot. You know it will come back to you. You know it because you have a lot of faith. If you have small faith, give only what you can. When Jesus saw that widow in the temple, the widow dropped two small copper coins. Jesus said she gave all she had to live on. So she actually gave more than all the other richer people there. You give according to your faith, what God tells you to give.
We are really so blessed hearing about your generosity, and we do believe that God sees that generosity and God gives us also, blessings. We just may not realize it when we give away. So in line with what you just said, Sean, there's our last and final question, which I think business owners can really relate to, because this is really a common concern. What is your company policy on employees who love to make cash advances, or bale? So example, to buy, motorbikes or, personal things. So what can you say about that?
99% of my people in the team are college graduates. So bale is actually not something that's common in my company. And we pay above minimum wage for our regular employees. So it's not common for us to have that. I might not be the most qualified person to answer this. My driver is also someone who is actually very good in saving his money. So he has not actually cashed advanced, except for his motorbike, which I was happy to bless him with because he uses it for my errands also. Collection ng cheque, deliver ng papeles, right? And I gifted him the lockbox sa motorbike. That's pretty expensive pala. That's like 9,000 pesos for the lockbox. It's no joke. So I gifted him that. It's very happy. I'm very happy with him. Treat your people fairly, like how you would want to be treated. If you think sobra na yung CA, non-performer siya, then you could talk with that person and say, I think we have to limit this. That's my opinion. This is just my opinion. I think we have to limit this. But, if your performance improves in these areas and you write that down and you ask that person to sign with the date, then we can talk again. You can increase your CA, your bale. If it was me, I think that's how I would do it. But if you have a performer, bale ng bale, papabale ko lang yon. Bakit? Nakatali siya sa akin, kailangan niya bayaran yun eh. So that's how I would do it.
I agree with that. Sometimes the cash advance needs to be commensurate to the amount of effort that they have given to your company. But sometimes cash advance is an opportunity to extend grace as well,
Yeah.
right? So that's all for our Q&A. Thank you so much, Sean. We learned so much from you, as in so many insights. So once again, on behalf of Friends, we want to thank you, our speaker, for the talk that you have just given.
It's my pleasure. It's my privilege.